Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast, brought to you by Seeker's Quest. I am Radha Priti, and I'm here with a live audience. I'm looking forward to hearing from you all today. I was just telling them I love how this has become like a collaborative effort, and we hear from our live audience and hear how things resonate with you all and your personal experiences. So thanks for showing up. And if you want to join our live audience, you can go to our Instagram, Seekers Quest 108, and in the link tree, there's a link to join our WhatsApp group, and then you'll get links through that. So please come and join us. So today is our 12th day of our journey through the Gita. On Monday, we had Chaitanya Charan come and share the chapter 1 summary. What'd you guys think of that? Did you guys appreciate that? Yeah, thumbs up. I agree. He's so profound and so digestible too, right? It's like he can make anything digestible, and even if it's like something that seems complicated or esoteric, or he can really just break it down and help you to absorb it. So yeah, it was great. I so appreciated him as well. So now we are in chapter 2 of the Gita, and we're coming up to the big verse, the big surrender verse. There's 3 big verses in the Gita where Arjuna really expresses a large degree of surrender, and this is the first one. And but first we're going to start with 2:6. So we're in chapter 2, text 6, if you want to follow along with us. And I'll go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get right into it. Nor do we know which is better, conquering them or being conquered by them. If we killed the sons of Dhritarashtra, we should not care to live. Yet they are now standing before us on the battlefield. So this is Arjuna speaking. And he's, again, having so much indecisiveness. We know this confusion, this indecisiveness is his last reason for not fighting. And his conflict is being revealed. He said this before. We've talked about this before. He would prefer to be a beggar than to fight, which we've talked about is such a big deal for Kshatriya. Like that's pretty much their whole life is wrapped up in their duty. So to say you'd rather be a beggar, it goes against their entire psychology, their entire makeup. But now he's saying he preferred to be a beggar, but is that what would be best for his entire family? So if he fights and conquers the kingdom, that would be terrible. But if he doesn't fight and conquers, that would also be terrible. So the very fact that Arjuna is going through all of these scenarios and considerations shows just how elevated he is and how much control he has over his mind and his senses. And his desire for begging, even though he grew up in a royal household, shows his detachment. And we've talked before about how his compassion and his love really makes him fit for receiving the spiritual wisdom. These things, same thing. This really makes him fit to excel spiritually. I mean, he's very enlightened being. And this principle is the same for us. If we want to attach to something higher, if we really want to get serious about our spiritual lives, we also have to detach from lower sense gratifications. And that's kind of the process, right? Is trying to do both at the same time. We're trying to attach to something higher, and at the same time, we're trying to regulate our senses. And that's why we have regulations in spiritual life. It's not to like restrict us or no, it's not like these rules that we have to follow, that if we don't follow, we're bad. And if we follow, we're good. It's more to kind of keep us in the lines so that we're not veering too far off the highway in a way that distracts us from attaching to something higher, which is our ultimate goal. So that's kind of the process in spiritual life, and why we practice those things. We practice control over our senses and regulation as far as our sense gratifications go. So for Arjuna, this is a lose-lose situation. And that indicates a significant difference in Arjuna's thinking, where before he was really like, all he saw was the bad in fighting. He's starting to see now the bad in not fighting. And this is another thing, another lesson we can learn from this. Chaitanya Charan says, opinions are like onions, know when they need to be sealed and peeled, which I think is kind of a fun quote. But it's interesting because we all have opinions or certain ways that we feel about things. And sometimes we even like lose touch with why we even feel the way that we feel about things. And so sometimes it's really important to do that, like self-assessment, like, why am I here? What am I doing? Like, what are the deeper reasons? And really get real with ourselves and kind of peel back all of those layers and understand the multifaceted reasons that we are maybe attached to something, or we're maybe behaving in a certain way. And then sometimes it's good at some point we have to kind of put a plug in that and say, okay, this is my decision. This is where I am. This is the direction that I'm going, and feel confident in that so that we're not like swayed back and forth. So this is something for that we can all really think about in our own lives. You know, I think about like how many relationships I stayed in way past their due date. Like, I didn't get married till I was 30, so I had a solid, like, I don't know, 12 years, maybe more, probably more, 14 years of dating before. And it was like, when I think back on that, I'm like, wow, there's so many relationships I should have left much sooner than I did, that I would have saved myself a lot of like grief and sorrow and hard lessons. And what to speak of like jobs that you stay in too long, or you know, just because we don't really get in touch with why we're doing what we're doing and what it actually means and how it aligns with our higher objectives in our lives, right? Or maybe we don't even really know what our higher objectives are in our lives. You know, that like pretty much defines my 20s. Like, I had really no idea where I was going or what I was doing. So it's so important to both get that kind of those higher objectives, like who we want to be, how we want to show up, what we want to align our life with, and then to constantly kind of recheck on this. Where are we? Are we aligned with our compass? And to yeah, really get real with ourselves, and to yeah. Oh, Damodar Priya, do you want to talk, Damodar Priya? I would love to hear you. Please share. You can take yourself off mute if you want to
No,
share your experience
I
with
just
this.
love what you're sharing. I don't know if you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
It just made what you're sharing just made me think. I'll try turning on my camera. I don't know how well it's going to show up. Nope, it's very dark. Never mind. So that we need to know ourselves before we can know other people. And I just thought of
Mm.
that as you were talking about trying to have relationships with others and how difficult that could be when you didn't really know yourself. And I think I could identify about that as well in my 20s and 30s. But my question, and just throwing it out to you in the group, is like, how about knowing God? Like, do we need to know ourselves first, or do we know God first? And like, where's the priority? So I don't really have an answer for that. I'm just curious. Thank you.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful. That's a great question. And I think that we really come to know ourselves more and on the deepest level when we come to know God. Right. I know that's the way that it works for me. I was like looking to figure I was, you know, trying to figure myself out through my career, trying to figure myself out through other people. And I remember I got so fed up with all of that because it just all led to like dead ends, or I just still wasn't satisfied. Even if I was successful, like in my career, I still wasn't fully satisfied. I remember my first trip to India. I was driving in a taxi to the hotel, and this song came on. That song, like "I Want to Know What Love Is," which is like a super corny song, right? But I remember feeling like, yeah, what is love? Like, I really resonated with that song at the time. It was just like a really profound moment. But I think through feeling that, through kind of developing that relationship with God and really starting to feel a level of shelter and a level of connection and a level of love, we come to really love ourselves. And in that, we come to really know ourselves. We allow, we again, we've talked about before, we have something bigger than ourselves to hold on to. And in that, it kind of gives us the freedom to really learn and grow and figure ourselves out without all of the without like all of the lines that we felt like we've had to fit in our whole lives, right? Like, I need to be a good career person. I need to be a good daughter. I need to be a good partner. It's like, who are we in the eyes of God? And once we really are situated in that and we establish that connection, it becomes like easier to just allow yourself to be, because because you know that just in that relationship, you're enough, and your real identity, right? Which is a part and parcel of God, which is a spirit soul. You're not expected to be, you don't need to be God. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need to have all of the answers. You don't need to be the all-knowing, the all, omnipotent. Like, it's okay. You're just you, and that's perfect. And God loves you the way that you are. And really being able to like imbibe that and to feel that and embrace that, I think allows you to love you the way that you are. And then with that comes the freedom to be who you are. Does anybody else have any experience with that they'd like to share?
Well, I can share on that, and I want to agree with you. I think that principally the learning to love God allows us to gain a higher perspective on ourselves. If we believe that we're this very, very small idea, we may not be able to reason our way to a more elevated idea of ourselves. And one of the things that you were highlighting this morning that was a new way of looking at Arjuna's journey, is that you said that despite being born into royalty, he was willing to do whatever, accept whatever condition in order to align with principle, like what he knew to be the truth. And I think that's what you're speaking into this morning. If we're willing to align with the highest idea that we understand, then we get a chance to see ourselves as Krishna was always seeing him. It's like, I see you differently. I know that what you're capable of. I know how you're loved. And so you can do the hard thing, and also shout out on your singing today. Good one on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good one on, because I think that we laugh at that song, but the reason why it's been so enduring and charming, is it was presented in a harmless way, but it's a great question, or comment. I want to know what love is. So thank you.
Wow, that was really beautifully articulated. I love how you just kind of tied everything together there. Yeah, that's exactly is what happens to Arjuna. He gets attached to something higher, and then he can see the context of even his attachments in relationship to his higher objective, and then his path becomes clear. And that's, yeah, exactly what the Gita can do for us, and why we have the Gita. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to go to the big verse? This is the mic drop for today, this verse. And there's so many lessons around this verse too that we could go through. Okay, 2:7. Now Arjuna says, I just added that part. That's not part of the verse. He says, now I am confused about my duty and have lost all my composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. Yeah, so we've been talking about this verse for a long time, because this is the verse where Arjuna comes to his knees and admits his limited condition and that he needs help. And he's asking, what is my duty? Should I fight? What is Dharma? And we see his mood changing. He was raising objectives before as to why he should not be fighting. And he made some good arguments, some really solid arguments. But now he's being more inquisitive. Now he's peeled that onion, and he's like, I still don't see, the path is still not clear to me. Please instruct me. And a key word in this verse is dharma. Dharma meaning the right thing to do. Dharma is a key word in the Gita. The Gita, the first verse of the Gita started off with that. When Dhritarashtra, the father of Duryodhana, the evil prince, asked what they do in this place of Dharma. Remember when we talked about the holy place and the impact that the holy place would have on the war? And so he's asked, so he's bringing that up because this theme of Dharma is so integral to the Gita. And when we talk about Dharma, again, we talk about the right thing to do. This could be in the sense of morality or meaning, like what's the higher meaning? What's the higher purpose? So every book has this driving question in it. Like what is the book trying to answer? The Mahabharata's driving question is about Dharma. The Mahabharata is the bigger book that the Gita is like right in the middle of. So the Gita is a part of the Mahabharata. And the Mahabharata's driving question is about Dharma also. What is the right thing to do? But the Mahabharata analyzes it in the light of stories. So there's lots of characters and people and things happening and relationships. And that kind of is how we come to understand Dharma. But the Gita, it's a part of the Mahabharata and it has the same question, but the answer is in terms more of like metaphysics. It discusses it in terms of the nature of reality. And within that discussion, the nature of responsible action is brought forth. So this verse right here is the beginning of the transition of the Gita. So up until now, circumstantial reasons and discussions have been happening, but now it's going to transition to more universal principles. And it's important to note here that Arjuna doesn't ask Krishna, should I fight or should I not fight? He's not seeking answers only to his specific dilemma. He asks Krishna, what is Dharma? What is the right thing to do? Because Arjuna is seeking this universal wisdom that can be applied in all situations. And after this question, Arjuna is going to ask through the course of the Gita, Arjuna is going to ask Krishna 16 more questions throughout the Gita, which arise because of the answer to the first question. By phrasing the question in universal terms, Arjuna paves the way for Krishna to share this timeless wisdom. And reciprocating with Arjuna's mood, Krishna doesn't get into the ethics of the battle, but instead addresses the universal questions about the meaning and purpose of life, and providing us all this compass that we're talking about for dealing with whatever dilemmas we may confront on our life journey. So the other thing here is Arjuna is changing the dynamic of their relationship, of him and Krishna's relationship. Before, Krishna's a charioteer, which Krishna's a charioteer and Arjuna's the warrior. Krishna's kind of like below Arjuna. That's kind of a lower thing. He's like serving him. We talked about that before. I was kind of serving him. Now Arjuna's asking Krishna to be his teacher. So he's asking him to instruct him. So they kind of switch a little bit. And Arjuna is requesting this, is asking for this. And the other kind of evolving of the relationship that we see that Arjuna goes from a place of his relationship with God, from a place of please do my will, right? Like in chapter 1, when he asked him to bring him to the middle of the battlefield, he's in that mood of like, please do my will, to I will do your will, and completely surrenders to him. And that's actually at the end of the Gita in the 18th chapter. But this is, again, something for us to aspire to in our relationship with God. And it takes time. It can't be artificially forced or faked or, because it takes experience and it takes, just like a relationship that you have with a partner, you have to kind of extend yourself and then see it reciprocated and then see that you're safe and that you're growing and that you're connected and that you're understood and that you feel loved and those kinds of things. We develop the same kind of relationship with God, You know, and in it, ideally, we go from one where God is merely an order supplier, merely we're convinced that we know best and that we're in control and we know what's best for our lives. And therefore we come to God asking what we already know is best for our lives, right? And God supplies that order, fills that order. We want to go from that to one where we trust in the plan that he has for us in the bigger picture. And we've rightfully taken our position as part and parcel, not trying to be God, but recognizing that we're part of the whole and we're trying to serve God. And therefore, though we may not always understand the bigger picture in the moment or at the time, it becomes evident to us as things continue to unfold. And from that, we gain trust in God's plan and we're able to lean into it a little bit more. Like I know when I moved to Pittsburgh, it was a career change. It was a career shift. I was working for the same company, but it's actually, I was getting a much better job. But it made no sense at the time. To me, I was like, I have no idea why I'm doing this, but I know that I think this job would be really good for me. So I moved here, and then I ended up moving like an hour from New Vrindavan and having this really beautiful community that I didn't have in New York before. And it just ended up being a really good change for my spiritual life. And then I ended up leaving my job 2 years later. So now I'm like, I didn't actually move here for a job. I moved here for my spiritual life, but I just didn't know it at the time. And so that now actually my husband and I are kind of looking at moving closer to the temple. And that's what I really feel like I want in my heart, but we just can't really find a property that fits for us in our lives right now. And for me, like old me, like, 10 years ago, I would have had decided what I wanted and I would have forced it and I would have made that happen. But now it's a little easier to be like, okay, I've seen the past 10 years or so, God really has my back. Like even when I have no idea what's going on and I think I know his plan is always better when I'm able to kind of just sit back and trust in the plan a little bit instead of trying to force and drive. It always works out better. So I'm able, from that experience, I'm able to trust in God's plan a little bit more. And in that, not force things when all the pieces don't seem to be aligning for whatever reason at the time. And that's how we kind of start to develop this love and trust in God's bigger plan, is by just practicing it on like incrementally. And then maybe we can give more and more and more. And with that, our emotions follow, where like before, maybe we're wrecked that things didn't end up the way that we wanted them to end up. Then we kind of understand, okay, maybe this is part of the bigger plan and I'm able to handle this a little bit more because I know that maybe I don't know best and maybe my plan isn't what's best for me and there's a bigger picture. So in that's kind of going to be Arjuna's process through the Gita, is this incremental surrender. And we also can have our own form of this incremental surrender. So does anybody want to share their experience with that?
This is if I may, this comment that you just made, your exchange you just offered, thank you, tied a piece together for me. We've been speaking over the course of our studies here about why the battleground metaphor. Mm. And I was thinking that the battleground, well, the way I hear it, is that it's a common metaphor and we all can understand battles in our life and being in the war. And the point of Arjuna's great fear was when he went to the middle of the battleground and it's like, let me look around, let me see all of the thoughts or conditions or things that I'm in conflict with. But what you just said was that God is always above the battleground, always able to see everything and to align us in a way that we can't see when we're in the midst of it. And I think that when we, use it that way, we can see that it's the perfect setup that we can apply over and over. I mean, it lives in our life that we say, okay, I can trust because God can see and is not involved in the battle and the path is clear and I can be directed if I choose to surrender.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's exactly true in this too. Like, even though Krishna accepted the position of Arjuna's charioteer, he still really knew Arjuna's mind, right? He knew everything. So when he even brought him to the center, he knew how it was going to affect him. In fact, he brought him to Bhishma and Drona, and then Arjuna starts to really feel emotionally affected from the gravity of the situation, really starts to set in for him. Krishna knew all of this.
That's
And
right.
and Krishna was, and it was part of the plan, so that there would be this impetus, this opportunity to reveal this deep spiritual wisdom that Krishna knew Arjuna needed to take it to the next level, and he knew that he was qualified for it. It was all arranged. And I love that you brought that point up.
Yeah,
But Krishna didn't intervene until Arjuna asks him to.
that's exactly right.
And until then, Krishna would be his order supplier. But when Arjuna got to the point where he's like, I can't do this on my own. I'm confused. Help me. You're going to see here in a couple of verses, Krishna's going to smile. He's like, okay, I've been waiting for this, but he'll wait, he'll wait, and he'll wait for us too.
Yep.
So
And if I
thank
could
you.
just on that, there's a parallel in the Christian text, wilt thou be made whole? Is the question that's asked by the Christ, will you be made whole? And there's no transformation possible until we say, instruct me, I'll be made whole. It's like, so I just wanted
Oh,
that.
wow. I love that. Thank you for sharing that parallel. I'll be honest with you guys, I grew up like studying the Bible, and I was really into it, but I had kind of an experience with the church where I felt a little bit turned off. And coming now to Krishna consciousness, it's into spiritual life, like this follows a little bit more Eastern philosophy. Seeing the parallels, it's actually really opened my heart back up to that. And I feel like now even have more of a relationship with Jesus than I did before, because I got a little bit burned, I felt. But
Yeah,
I love all the parallels. Thank you.
get that one.
Lakshmi, do you want to share with us?
Yes, Radha. I want to share my experience regarding what you said about when we want God to help us, it may not go as we plan, but it will be different. And so I want to share my experience in that context. So I shared that I have a special needs child, and then my husband was in denial, and our relationship was so much strained. Relationship with my in-laws also was very strained, and I was totally helpless. So in that condition, I was like, Krishna, I know you are God, but why this is happening to me, I don't really know. Please help me. I can't deal with this situation on my own. Please help me. And I cried so intensely that day. And with that crying and praying, I was like, I let my feelings out. I said, Krishna, you take my prayer, whatever you want to do, you do it. And after that, for a few days, nothing happened. And then slowly things started change, but not the way I was expecting. But the things were changing, that my perception towards the situation started changing. So I was gaining more inner strength. So that was the beginning of my spirituality. And slowly things were like changing and unfolding, like the onions were peeled. And the situation is the same. But my approach and my way of thinking has been like the onion peels were going off slowly. It took about 10 years to peel the onion. And then, yes. And then the things like I was accepting everyone as they are. And I was looking at the things also, these are helping me internally. And that when I started realizing that, I know Krishna has really answered my prayer. So I just wanted to share that experience with you all. Thank you.
Wow. I love that. Thank you. So you felt like Krishna came and gave you what you needed to have deeper realizations and to see the situation in a broader perspective.
That's true.
Wow. And in that you got more grounded in your connection with God, and you had like your own battlefield experience. That's amazing.
Sure do.
Yeah, like you said, we all have our own battlefields.
Yeah. Yeah. And your inner landscape really got changed. That's amazing. That's a testament to your sincere surrender in that prayer. And that's why you say now, right, that experience that you thought was like at one time you probably thought was the worst thing to ever happen to you. It's now you look back and say, I'm so grateful for this in my life and wouldn't have it any other way, right?
Exactly.
It's amazing. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Mm.
Okay, so should we go on to the next point? Does anybody else want to share before we go on to the next point? This next point that we get from this verse is intelligence means that we know what to do when we don't know what to do. Right? Arjuna's life had always run along the track of Dharma, but now he's come across an intersection where he's pulled in opposite directions by two Dharmas. As a member of the Kuru dynasty and his allegiance there, and as a martial guardian of society as his role as a Satriya. So he's conflicted and he's baffled and disheartened and intellectually paralyzed. And this is when he turns to Krishna and he surrenders to Krishna to really understand the essence of Dharma. Right? He starts to peel back that onion and he's saying, okay, well, my choices, I'm really trying to make choices aligned with Dharma. That's my compass. I want to be aligned with Dharma. But he's seeing a conflict there. Like he doesn't actually know what Dharma is because of these conflicting alliances or commitments. So he turns and he learns of his eternal identity as part of the whole. And this knowledge allowed him to see his other dharmas as being integrated with and subordinated to his dharma of serving the whole. And internalizing this vision, he's able to resolve his dharma. The pathway becomes clear. And again, this is parallel with our journey. The spiritual knowledge can help us do the same thing, realize our core identity and our ultimate destiny. And once we become grounded in our fundamental function to serve the whole, we will gain divine guidance to figure out a constructive way through the dilemma. So this lesson really ties the past two together. And even the question that Damodar Priya asked, is really getting grounded in that, in our core identity and our ultimate destination. And that puts all of our other functional identities into perspective. They're just really to support the whole, just support us along this journey to something that's much bigger, something that's much deeper. And in that, when we get really serious about that, Krishna will give us what we need in our internal landscape and our external circumstances to get there if we get really sincere about our spiritual lives. So that's kind of a beautiful point, and again, the process that Arjuna goes through. So the next point here, and if anybody has anything to say, please just put your hand up or interrupt, or I'll just keep moving through the lessons in this profound text. Yeah, Brittany just says intelligence means that we know what to do when we don't know what to do. Yeah, right. Sometimes we think intelligence is like, how much knowledge, how much can I accumulate? How much can I put in this that then I can like bring out in times and it sounds smart, but it's like, what about when we don't know what to do? How do we handle things then? Because if we really think that we're always going to know and we always have it figured out as we are alone, we're in for some serious lessons, right? Okay, next point. Proving that we are right is not as empowering as probing if we are wrong. So no matter how much we know, what we don't know is always more than what we know. And I think there's like a saying even that goes like, as we learn more about something, as we become an expert, we learn how much we really don't know, because that's just how life works, right? It's like Pandora's box. It just keeps going and going. And we usually operate within what we know, establishing routines and executing our responsibilities within that zone. I mean, that's just natural. That's just like how we function as humans. But then we encounter things that we don't know, and not just factual things that we can find out from a Google search, but also like foundational insights about unknown aspects of known things. For example, we may have like our whole life mapped out, but something or someone might turn out in a way that we didn't expect. Right? It's like we think we found the perfect career, but then this happens, or we think we found the perfect partner, but then they do this, and we like it's like paradigm shifting for us, right? Like we get cheated on. Like I remember when I was in high school and I thought I was like found the love of my life. We were together for like 3 years. He went to college, he cheated on me. I remember I couldn't like eat or sleep. It was like I was like, I don't even know what's real anymore, what's not real. And it's paradigm shifting, these experiences that we have when we thought that we knew, and it turns out we didn't. So oftentimes when this happens, we try to force our beliefs on the situations, unable to accept that we're wrong and our conception of reality is crushed, right? Have you ever done that? Like you just can't handle this reality. So in your mind, it's still not real to you. It's like, I'm just not going to accept it. And if I don't accept it, then it's not real. So instead of trying to define our reality, what if we become more comfortable with expanding our reality?
Mhm.
Right? And for this, we need to approach situations with a learning attitude. And this can not only empower us in this situation, but it can also help us learn something new about the structure of reality that can empower us lifelong. And this is the attitude that Arjuna had when he surrendered to Krishna here, acknowledging the futility of all the reasoning he had been doing till then. And he then became empowered by the Gita. And in this, we can do the same thing, but we have to really confront like our inner tapestry and see what we're attached to and what we just can't let go of in terms of our conceptions of reality. And when we're challenged, acknowledge that we're being challenged right now. You know, I just gave this class, this Urban Davy class on managing conflicts. And one thing that we talked about that people seem to really resonate with is the importance of approaching conversations with a good blend of curiosity and humility, right? Showing up in the mood of like, I don't know everything, but I'm really curious. I want to learn your perspective. I want to use your perspective to broaden mine. And in that, we can really have these like endearing, connecting relationships. But if we don't have that curiosity, you know, if we don't care, if we don't inquire, we're limiting connection. And if we don't have that humility, then we're really only showing up so that we can prove that we're right. And, you know, again, what kind of like how deep and are our connections really going to be if that's the mood we're always showing up with? You know, so these principles are important, just even just like in relationships. It's just being able to show up with that blend of curiosity and humility. And in that, maybe we can release a little bit of our grip on our conception of reality, understanding that it's actually so much bigger than that. And we're able to do that. We're able to let go of that tight attachment a little bit to what we know and what we think is real, because we feel embraced and sheltered by something bigger. And that's how all of these principles kind of come to work together as we develop the relationship with divinity, and we trust in that plan and that custom made plan for us in our lives. We're able to be okay with, and not only be okay with, but actually invite, okay, maybe it's time for my reality, for my conception of reality to shift a little bit. And maybe that'll be my next upgrade in life. And maybe that will actually be good. And we can welcome that with more curiosity and open-heartedness. So Dharma Priya said a couple things. I'm going to read this. This makes me think of the difference between intelligence and wisdom in the serenity prayer. Praying for the wisdom to know the difference between what we can change and cannot. Perhaps then it's praying for the wisdom to know what we do and don't know, Yeah, that's a really nice parallel. And it's so true. And getting to that place where you want that. Yeah, that is like paradigm shifting. That in itself will start to perpetrate changes in your life if you could get to that change in the inner landscape. And then Damodar Priya says, or having the humility to accept what we don't know and being open to curiosity, changing ourselves that way. Yeah, nice parallel. I like that. Thank you. Does anybody else want to share before we move on to text 2.8?
You know, I love your point, the point of accepting what we don't know as a new possibility. And I just remember when I was in a relationship with someone who had children, and I was, at that time, I didn't have children, but I knew everything about what you should do when you're ready. I mean, like everything. And so I always had an opinion about this and I had an opinion about that. And it wasn't until I became a parent that I was able to see, situations differently, like the power to, change them. Are they unchangeable, or just at the level of my awareness, they seem impossible? And so when I became a parent, suddenly all of the conflicts I had with the person in hindsight became like, oh, so sorry about that. You know what I mean? I have a whole nother perspective on what it means to be a parent that in my previous lived experience, I had no idea about. So I just wanted to share.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Yeah, it's like whether or not you want to have a relationship with divinity and you want to practice these things, the universe will show you, will teach you them anyway. Like your perspective is not the only perspective, is not the sole perspective. Not everything will fit inside of your box. And that's okay. But it'll teach you, and sometimes in harsher ways. So
Yeah.
it's like if we can start to be more comfortable with that and invite that, it will save us a lot of resistance and heartache, and because that is just the reality. We are part and parcel. We do not have full perspective. And sometimes it's actually like a relief, it's like, oh, okay. I don't have to know everything. I don't have to be the one to figure it all out. I don't have to, it's like, oh, that's nice. Okay, let's go to Dharma Priya. I appreciate that. There are so many times I wish I could apologize to people for my past know-it-all self. Oh, touche. Totally agree. It's like a little bit embarrassing. Thank you. Okay, so 2.8. This will be our last one for today. I can find no means to drive away this grief, which is drying up my senses. I will not be able to dispel it, even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth with sovereignty. Gosh, guys, I'm so bad at pronouncing words. Sovereignty, like the demigods in heaven. Is that, Lisa, how do you say that word?
Sovereignty?
Sovereignty, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, that's like my kryptonite's words.
Mhm.
Okay, so Arjuna is saying here that the prize is not worth the price. That if he fights and wins, he will feel emptiness, even if he gets the kingdom on earth or heaven. So possessions are meaningless to him. And this is something for us all to contemplate when our life path that was set for us just doesn't make sense. Like if we get a good job, we get married, we get the picket fence, and we're still not happy, right? This isn't a casual question, but an existential question about the meaning of existence. The problems of material existence, birth, death, old age, disease, they can't be solved by accumulation of wealth and economic development. Like the richest people in the world cannot solve these problems, cannot get out of these inevitable things. So we need spiritual solutions to these problems. It's evident, right? And sometimes even like we'll get so stuck in the material maze that we'll say, oh, okay, I'm not happy with this job because of this reason. Then I know that if I get this new job, that'll fix that reason, right? And then another reason pops out. And then we're just playing that game. What's that game at the arcade where you're like whacking all the moles. That's like material existence, right? Another thing pops up. Okay, well, if I change this, well, then another thing pops up. So it's like at some point we come to this realization, right? Like where Arjuna is, that it's like, okay, we need something bigger, something deeper, or we're just going to spend the rest of our lives whacking moles in this material maze. And that's a real thing. So I think a lot of us on this call, and hopefully that's why we're here, we've come to this point where we've decided we don't want to do that. And all of these things that we talked about today are required to come to that realization. You know, if I was like this, I know everything kind of person, I would have just spent my whole life whacking these moles.
Mhm.
So we come to this place where we realize that we need these spiritual solutions. It's inevitable. And pleasure is just too fragile of a purpose to sustain us through life's troubles. We all seek pleasure, yet sometimes we can be put in such dilemmas and traumas that pleasure is impossible. And what do we do then, right? Do we like lose our will to live because we can't get what we think we need to make us happy? Right. And so through spiritual wisdom, we learn a higher purpose for life based on spiritual worldviews. The view being at our cores, we are indestructible souls, part of the wholes. And our talents and our achievements are meant ultimately to help connect us devotionally with divinity and contribute practically in this world for our and others' well-beings, or ours and others' well-being. Having a day today. So God is within us, and our consciousness is our defining characteristic. And what do we do with that consciousness? If we offer it to God through inner remembrance and outer service, we become empowered with a purpose. And the purpose of connection and contribution, which, when customized according to our unique interests and skills, energizes our lives with meaning and fulfillment. This is what sustains us through life's distresses, right? This is like the deeper thing that we're looking for, is this connection with God, which in the practice of bhakti yoga, we do through inner remembrance and outer service. And this absorption itself provides a deep fulfillment, which is deeper and richer than anything provided by sensual pleasures. And this is how the process happens. We talked about at the beginning, right, where we're detaching but attaching at the same time. These things are happening simultaneously. And even the more that we put ourselves in this, the more that we're practicing this inner remembrance and this outer service, the less that we're even like attracted to things that we used to go to maybe for sense gratification. Like we no longer care to go out with our friends late on a Saturday night because we want to be able to wake up early for our sadhana. And we know that that will actually really sustain us in such a holistic way that we don't want to give it up. It's not as fulfilling for us to go out late drinking and, you know, partying or whatever it is that we do, because we know where that actual inner fulfillment comes from. So this will happen naturally to us if we sincerely do put some spiritual practices in our life so that we can attach. We'll see that these other things that we used to use because we thought that they made us happy actually don't really make us as happy as we thought. And the fulfillment we get from that is much more fleeting and much more temporary and much less satisfying. So I'm assuming that we can all relate to that because we're all here and we're all looking for the taste and we're all experiencing it on some level. And in that, I'm grateful for all you seekers.
Mhm.
Does anybody want to share anything about that?
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on that idea. I'm so very new, but as I continue on, I can feel my taste for all of the material things slowly starting to dissolve. But in the beginning, it was actually pretty big. It was like all of a sudden music, TV, going out. And there was a point that I stood around and looked at my life and I was like, well, what do I do then? Like, I don't enjoy anything I used to enjoy. None of this stuff is bringing me any happiness. And now slowly it's starting to be replaced with all of these other little things. But I remember very clearly being so shook by how little I was interested in anything anymore. I didn't even know where to go or what to do. So, but now it's also, it's so beautiful. I have, like you mentioned, you get these tastes for higher things, and and it just naturally, they are just falling off. And I'm thinking right now, as you're speaking about not going out on a Saturday night because we want to wake up early, and how grateful I am to be at that place. Like, what a beautiful and incredible place it is to be at, because I see everyone else going out and doing the other, and they're not, it's not very, anyways, I'm so grateful to be here. I'm so grateful for this podcast. Radha, just to let you know, somebody asked me who is Arjuna the other day, and I think a few months ago, I'm not sure I would have been able to explain it the way that I did. I was able to kind of hold my own, so I can even feel my understanding opening up to this particular thing. You know, I don't know. I'm just, this is so sweet.
Love
And I'm so
that.
grateful.
Oh my
Thank you.
gosh. That's such a win. I love that you're able to hold your own and talking about Arjuna. That is like music to my ears. Thank you. And thank you for sharing. That's amazing that you had that experience where it all happened so quickly. I think too, like some people can have that experience and some people it takes a little bit more time. And that's why we try to regulate. Like I was talking about my struggle with Netflix. I'm like, okay, I know I shouldn't be watching 6 hours of Netflix. I'm going to watch 1 hour of Netflix a day. I'm going to regulate myself on that so that it doesn't pull me too far away from really appreciating what I know, where I know the nectar comes from, right? Because I know that I feel actually more depleted after binging on Netflix. And I know that after studying or meditating or, I feel actually more depleted. So I'm going to self-regulate so that I don't get too pulled away. And that's the practice. Thank you. Would anyone else like to share anything? That was so beautiful. Bhagavad Gita on Netflix one day. That'd be amazing. Yes, please.
Okay, you know what? I feel like I've been talking today, but I do have to just share this story about early in my journey. I went out on that Saturday night that you're speaking about, but I was full on party mode. But in my heart, there was a moment where I just like wanted to go back to the house and sit in my sadhana. And I did. And it took me so long to drop into that experience, into that pocket, that it removed the desire for it. It's like,
Wow.
I was like, oh, okay. I have to fight through all of the senses and all of the deadening of my perception in order to get to this sweet spot where I feel connection. I don't want to do that. And it was, that pivotal moment that moved me, and I knew that I was different.
Wow. That's amazing. What a profound experience. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to share about their detachment from what they thought made them happy and attachment to something deeper and more profound? Love hearing from you all. It inspires me all day long, all week long. Okay. Oh, yay. Damodar Priya. Let's hear. Please share.
Hare Krishna. I have, mine is a cautionary tale that sometimes when we get on this spiritual path, if we know that there are certain things that are not good for us, but we're in denial, we don't realize that we're praying for what's actually going to come our way. So for me, it was that I started on this path in 2015, and I didn't realize how much I was addicted to like the work that I was doing at the time, which was a very unhealthy, dysfunctional, kind of toxic environment where I was just surrounded with circumstances that wasn't really conducive to my spiritual well-being. And as much as I was trying to be like a light in the darkness of what was there, it was really draining me, and it was not helping me. But I was so kind of really addicted to like the persona of like I was who I was through my work, right? I don't know if anybody
Mhm.
else can relate to this, where you're just like, if you're not doing that, you don't know who you are.
Totally.
And you feel like, yeah, you feel like your well-being is, and your sense of self is just validated through that. So
Yes.
Krishna was just like, I'm sure he set me a lot of clues before finally he was just like, okay, you're not getting it. And I became so ill that
Mm.
that I had to stop working full time altogether, and things just kind of went so quickly that all of a sudden I found myself, like I said, not being able to work, having more time to do japa, and all of a sudden I was doing 16 rounds because, well, I also almost died in the whole getting really ill and stuff, but all these things. And then again, like now I can speak to it of like, oh, okay, I get it. Like it wasn't like a punishment. It was just more of like a wake up call. And it was obviously he loves me very much, and he was just like, yeah, this is not good for you. And then now, speeding past that to 2024. So I became really ill in 2018. So 6 years later, I can look back and see, okay, I see your plan, Krishna. Like he wanted me to come down to Alachua, Florida, which is where I live right now. I'm part of this amazing devotee community, one of the largest Hare Krishna communities in North America. Like I have gotten a lot of healing for my physical ailments, but also my emotional and spiritual ailments. And I'm actually a lot healthier than I was. I mean, not always, obviously, because I was super healthy when I was younger, but still, like in a different way. Like I'm more able to appreciate it. And instead of having a toxic environment, now I have the opportunity to work in a devotee school as a teacher's
Wow.
assistant, which is what I went to school for. And it is really my dream job. Like I never thought that I could combine what I went to school for and got my multiple degrees in a devotional way, and like go into a classroom where there's deities there, and what I'm doing is devotional service. And I would never have imagined it, nor would I have accepted it before I became really, really ill, because I needed that wake up call. So it's a little long-winded. I tried to abbreviate it, but hopefully it makes sense.
No, that's beautiful and a perfect example of how if we don't imbibe these things ourselves, Krishna will show us. We'll get there. It might be a little bit more painful of a path, but we'll get there. He'll get us there. And wow, you received such great mercy in that. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Well, thank you all. Thanks for coming and sharing your hearts and your energy and keeping this thing going. Let's get more let's broaden our community, right? So if you don't follow on Instagram already, let's please follow and share with your friends and bring your friends, and let's get this community of seekers going. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Nice to see you, Maggie. Thank you.
Thank you, Radha.